Thank you for staying with us. Now let's get the show started. Worldwide, schools and universities have been bombed, shelled, burned. Children, students, teachers, academics have been killed, maimed, abducted, and arbitrarily detained 7 years after Chibok, where more than 270 girls were abducted. We have had incidents of more children being abducted, kidnapped, and some of them to this day, no traces. That is so sad, and my heart goes out to the parents of those children. If your child dies, you bury your child, and you get some kind of closure, because I don't think any parent can ever recover from the death of a child. But that your child was abducted, that hope, that fire remains in you, that you may one day see your child again.
And that's even for those who, I mean, that angle that you've talked about is quite touching. But how about what happens even after the children have returned home? What have we been able to do? They're so maligned in their minds. Let's just get into the conversation. So,
Yes, we have 3 guests who are going to join us to look at this today because we need to find a way to keep these children safe. We can't continue like this. Your child leaves home to go to school. You expect them back from school, don't you? So how are we going to achieve that? Let's talk to these 3 guests today who might have some ideas as to how we can keep our schools safe. With us in the studio, we have Father Leo Moneme, who's a school administrator. Good morning.
Good morning, Alero.
Thank you for joining us. And joining us via Zoom, we have Ambassador Victoria Ekhomu, who is Managing Director of Transworld Security. Good morning.
Good morning, everybody.
We also have the UNICEF representative in Nigeria, Mr. Peter Hawkins, who joins us from our studio in Abuja. Good morning.
Good morning, everybody.
Thank you for joining us today. Now, Father, I'm sorry I was getting emotional talking about it because I'm a mother. We had Chibok, we had Dapchi, Kankara, Dandume, and the list just goes on and on. And last week we had the one in the Polytechnic. Or was it this week?
Yep.
The Polytechnic in Kaduna. Our children don't feel safe anymore. Parents don't feel safe sending their children to school. You are a school administrator. What are the things we need to be doing to keep our children safe?
Well, first of all, thanks for this question. You need not apologize for getting emotional, Alero. That's right. All of us remain emotional about the first time this happened, in Chibok in 2014 with the abduction of 276 girls. And, since then, some of their parents have actually lost their lives. They've died, after endless waiting. In terms of what's the way forward, right now, for me, the nation is in a state of multiple siege. And we need to address the immediate cause, the primary cause of all this. But of course, we also need to protect the children because in Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of need, safety comes in before education. If your child is not safe, you don't start talking about education. That's another need. But the child has to be safe, And no mother would send a child to a place that it's not safe for the child, because that's like a suicidal mission. So what's the root cause of all these things, all these happenings? So many of them. One of them, it's the state of poverty in the country. The rate of dropout of children from primary transiting to secondary school is quite high. Data says we have about 30% dropout. And then when they finish primary school, about only 54% are able to enter a school.
Higher institution.
Yeah, higher institution, due to poverty, insecurity, the rate of girls getting married is quite on the increase, child labor, and so forth. So these same people that drop out are unfortunately the ones that are kind of used to perpetrate these acts of terror on fellow children. Because if you remember the case of the Federal Government College in Kebbi State, when they abducted 5 students and 2 teachers, and the Nigerian Army and the Nigerian Air Force went to rescue them. Most of those that were actually these bandits were children, were young people. So these are most probably dropouts from school. So there has to be a means to kind of reduce the rate of dropout of students. Then the borders are so porous, a lot of arms coming in, and a lot of migrants from Niger, from Chad, from Cameroon coming in who are not citizens. They also are used as perpetrators of this heinous crime on children. So there has to be a better measure to make sure that the borders are closed. Of course, bad leadership, we cannot run away from that. Bad leadership is also a major factor at all levels. If there is bad leadership in the nation or in the state, then there is room for this kind of things to happen. Because since 2014, you would think that it will be a never again policy, but it's like one day after another, and it's happening with impunity. So there is no punishment, no penalty, no prosecution for whoever does this, So everybody's like, okay, well, we can still making money out of this because it's such a lucrative business.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Ambassador Victoria, we seem to find ourselves in a catch-22 situation. We want our children to be educated, and yet when they leave home, they're not safe. So we are wont to think that maybe we shouldn't even send them to school at all. We should probably try and teach them what we can from home, which in some cases will not amount to much. So education, safety, question marks on both of them.
Quite a scary situation. As UNICEF even reported yesterday, that's this day, that over 950 students have been abducted since December 2020, and which is quite scary. I'm a mother too, and a grandmother at that. So when anyone happens, it touches me. And what is going on is, in fact, striking the foundation of society. These children are the future. And for us to have them being exposed to this continuous risk and not to do much to, in fact, stop it is, in fact, I would say it's not good. So we have to step up because for the Boko Haram, they say Western education is not good. And, it started with that. The kidnap started with the Chibok girls being kidnapped by Boko Haram. And that made a lot of international news. And even the Safe School initiative came up. I remember Prime Minister Gordon Brown, in fact, was in the forefront of it. And a lot of international donors, a lot of Nigerians, all of them pledged money, and a lot of money was realized. And with so much money that has been realized, one would have expected that some of these schools would at least have been secured and at least protected, so that at least these children will be protected from this heinous crime that is going on in our society right now. Because we send our children to school to learn, but you cannot send children to school to a place where where you are not sure they will come back. So that will really scare a lot of parents from sending their children to school, even for children to even go to school. So if we don't do something about it, it means that we have allowed the Boko Haram to succeed in their quest. And the government must make sure that something is done. I know recently there was a probe by the Senate into the $20 million or so that was that they got for the school, the Safe School initiative. Because with that, what would have happened is at least would have used something like the risk assessment, that's risk management tools in place. At least with that, we would have protected the schools, at least fenced the school. That's do layered security, fence most of the school. And when I see most of them, they fence the schools, put security guards in the place, put police in place. And in this particular case, the Petel, it was said that they sent a letter of threat to the school that they were coming there to abduct them on Tuesday. All that happened was that they did it on Monday, and they came. I learned that they went through the security, the police or the guards, and then they were able to take so many people away from the 168 boarding house students. They were able to take, I think, about 140. Some reports say 140. Some say 150. But at least 25 were able to escape. But something has to be done about this. This cannot continue. It was in fact so bad that even the governor of Kaduna State had to withdraw his own children from public schools. That shows that, if he withdraws them, who am I? Who are the citizens to still keep children in school? So what happens to education? What happens to our children? So something must be done to ensure that the schools are protected and to ensure that the bandits are removed from this environment. Because if we're able to deal with the IPOP and we say we are dealing with the other things, we should use the same zeal to deal with these people, because they are killing our children, they are killing our people, and it's in fact affecting investment from international communities. And Nigeria has become a laughingstock, and nobody feels safe in this country. We can't be losing our children every day, and they are paying ransom. Even when the ransoms are being paid, it's the poor parents that have to pay the ransom. So we have to, do something better. We have to do a better job of it. Before we were saying Chibok girls, but there are so many cases that are happening every day. I can't even keep up with the number of cases, but we have to stop them.
All right. Well, yeah, that's actually, the goal here, to address the issues in such a way that at least we can look for solutions. But Mr. Hawkins, well, the UNICEF in that report put out actually talked about quite a number of countries, DRC, so many countries that you mentioned, Niger Republic, Central African Republic, and all of that. And of course, Nigeria is one of them. I'm just wondering, what exactly is there to be done that hasn't been done, where you sit, especially in Nigeria? Part of that document says it's not enough to condemn these crimes, not when millions of children face a worsening protection crisis. Children living in these areas need concerted action to ensure that they can safely live, go to school, or fetch water without fear of being attacked or taken from their families. What is there to be done that, in your opinion, may not have been done or considered?
Absolutely. A lot has to be done. And the fact that the Chibok girls are still not back at home and are away from their home is an indication that not enough has been done, and we must move fast. But I think the first thing is understanding the situation. What is the laydown? The Chibok girls was obviously ideological. It was the insurgency that promoted that kidnapping. Other parts of the country, things have moved in a slightly different way, where conflict, whether it's conflict between communities, have exacerbated the situation. But there's also the issue of extortion. So the first thing that has to be done is sharing of intelligence and understanding what are the root causes of the insecurity, what are the root causes of the people behind the kidnappings. The second that really must be done with some urgency, and we recently had the security services with us talking about state plans and where the laydown is, where the pinch points are, where the risks are, and mitigate against those risks in whatever way that is required, whether that's infrastructural, whether that's a response by the security forces and an early warning system. But I think the main thing, and I think your previous speakers have alluded to this, is the relationship between the school and the communities, the local communities. It's about the value of learning, the value of education, is the schools must reach out, the establishment must reach out to the communities to ensure that they understand the value of education. They themselves perceive the protection of those institutions and the people inside the institutions, both the pupils and the teachers, is paramount and is an essential part of what the community must do. The school-based management committees are there. Resources can be put through so that schools can extend into the communities and feel the better ownership from that communities and therefore better protection.
Well, Mr. Hawkins, you would remember, of course, the Safe School Initiative. Ambassador Ekhomu mentioned it earlier. So I'm just wondering, what you think may have stalled the process? I mean, what kind of conversations you have had with both government and other, institutions all over the world that UNICEF has to deal with, especially concerning this Safe School Initiative in Nigeria? What do you think may be reason for maybe stalling the progress, or things that we need to expedite so schools can be safer?
I think when you go back to 2014, 2015, there was a process, and it continued, and it continues to today. The issue there is we need to compare where education was in 2015 in, say, for example, Borno, and where it is today. Many more children are going to school today in Maiduguri, for example, than they were in 2015. In actual fact, it's a massive change. But what we have to do is continue to work to ensure that other schools are available and those children have access to those schools. In a height of a conflict, that is obviously very difficult, but we're doing everything we can, not only in terms of construction, but getting the teachers into the LGAs, getting the pupils safely into schools and back. It's a very precarious business. But in the northwest, say in Zamfara, Kaduna, and places like that, this is a new or recently evolving phenomena. It started in December, and we believe that 1.3 million children have been affected this academic year in one way or another by insecurity. And the profound effect, not only on the children themselves, but on parents and other children elsewhere who now fear going to school, as Alera quite rightly pointed out. Children should have a right to education. Children should have a right to be able to ensure that when they do go to school, they come back home safely.
Now, Father Leo, some of the clips we saw of the schools from which some of these children were abducted, to some people, left a lot to be desired. There were even no fences, no gates, no nothing. So should more be done in that regard to start with?
Yes, so even in the situation where there were the schools were not being attacked by bandits, the schools were not really worthy of existence at that time before banditry, started in the northwest. Because if you go to these schools, you just have empty shells of classrooms and reading desk and chairs. Even the hostels, you see kids being packed like sardine. So no fence, that is undesirable. That is a no-no in the 21st century in Nigeria today with our situation. No CCTV cameras, no security personnel, and no relationship between the school and the community police, or the state police. So of course, these schools are so vulnerable. It's so easy for bandits to come and attack and take the children. So that for me is a no-no. Because in order to forestall banditry, in order to forestall the kidnapping of children, we need a 24/7 surveillance internally and also externally. We need a very tight security network, very important communication gadgets. And I'm not just talking about private schools, government schools now. So don't, this is not just for private schools, this is for all schools. Because whatever affects any school in Nigeria affects the other.
But Father Leo, what
Yeah.
you're talking about is additional expense for these schools. And who's going to bear the brunt? It's the students.
That's the question.
Fees are going to be increased so they can have CCTV, so they can have electrified fences, they can employ security personnel who will be armed. They have to be armed. Because we heard about one school, they came in, about 100 of them came on motorcycles. 100 people? You really have to be well armed to be able to deter 100 bandits coming into your school.
Well, that was in Federal Government College in Kebbi. And for that to have happened, it required a lot of intelligence on the part of the banditry. So we also need some form of intelligence to fight banditry. Well, I mentioned the immediate protection of the children, but of course I also talked about the root cause. The committee should continue to kind of address the root causes, but right now I'm talking about the immediate protection of the children. If a school is not safe for a child, then no child should be sent to that particular school. When these people came to attack, they knew that the school was porous. That's why they did what they did. The one that happened in Kebbi State. So it requires intelligence to also fight banditry, and we need to be very proactive. We don't have to be doing a kind of a post-mortem effect, waiting for something to go wrong, and then you now start addressing it. We need to be, the government should also kind of use intelligence to deploy technology, drones, to fish out these bandits, smoke them out of the forest, out of their holes, wherever they're hiding, because they plan all this. This is a well-organized crime, and they plan all this in the bush, in the hiding place, and then now launch an attack. Of course, we also have to find out who sponsors these bandits. So it requires intelligence for that to happen. So there's so many dimensions that should be used in fighting banditry.
One of the things that I wanted to ask you, being a school administrator, is quite a number of things that I would love to ask you being a school administrator. But let me begin with this one. For one, the schools themselves would need some form of preparation. You're talking about immediate protection for the kids. The school themselves would need to have some form of protection for themselves, the teachers, the staff, and all of that. And then the students themselves need to know what to do to protect themselves in the event of any such eventuality. I also know that, and I was surprised, Alera, to find out that schools now teach security as a subject. And so I was pleasantly surprised, that they now... So how significant is that, teaching students in security in schools, and how far do you think that can go? And then for the staff and the teachers themselves, what can they do to... How would they know such a thing was coming to be able to, stave it off, or at least curtail to whatever extent?
Thank you, Ayo. Yes, security is now part of the national value education. It's integrated into the curriculum in schools in Nigeria. It's an important, it's a very good concept, but it's one thing to have a concept theoretically, it's another thing to implement. But it's a wonderful concept, and it's important that the children are conscientized on the issue of what they need to know about security tips, on the issue of crimes and prevention, on the issue of safety, their own personal safety, in a school environment and outside of the school environment, because there are schools that are fully burdened, and there are some that are burden and day, and there are some that are just purely day. So all these tips are very helpful for children, because how do these people operate? How do kids get kidnapped? They kidnap kids unaware because they're not aware. So the awareness is very important. And the same thing applies to the teachers. The teachers have to be trained, to teach this subject. So they're not just kind of teaching them from purely a theoretical perspective, but in terms of the context of what's happening in the nation. So definitely, it's a good introduction to the Nigerian curriculum. but there is need for further training so that this actually becomes meaningful. But I don't want to be naive in saying that that's where we should limit it, because a school might do all it needs to do. The school is not an island. The school lives in a macro society. So the school still needs to engage the community, and the school needs to engage the state. And the state still needs to do its job to protect children, So I'm not trying to kind of say that the school should just be doing it on its own without all this other bigger picture, being aware of this bigger picture.
Well, Ambassador Ekhomu, you also happen to operate within a school system, School of Management and Security. In fact, the three are just so aptly put together: school, management, security. So if you kind of put the three, and then ultimately that is what this is all about. So I'm just wondering if you think schools can have any kind of security arrangement peculiar to them. Maybe the primary schools, what kind of security arrangement do you think should be peculiar to them? Father Leo has mentioned CCTV cameras and, all of that. I'm wondering, do you agree with him? And then if you do, how far-reaching can that be, especially, in the areas in the north where this insecurity is rife?
See what is going on in the north, where they are kidnapping children. They're spending about 180 million as ransom to get these children back after they have been traumatized and damaged for life. So when you look at that amount, the amount that is being spent, and what is happening to our children, I think it behooves us to do something to protect the schools, to ensure that the children do not go through this trauma anymore. And I will look at it through the risk management approach. In that case, you identify the assets, and these assets are our children, for goodness sake. They are the most valuable assets, these children who we're sending to school. Then the teachers that are there to teach them, they are quite valuable. So we have to ensure that they are protected. And how do we do this? We have to now look at the risk that is that is there in that particular environment. When you do the risk threat metrics, you see that in the north, east, and northwest, the probability that these children will be kidnapped is so high. In the south, that's not so much. But even then, schools should ensure that they use the layered approach. That's ensure that they put as many boundaries, as many barriers in place to ensure that even when these adversaries, these terrorists strike, at least the children have some chance to get away. There are a few cases where children have gotten away. So we should have fences. And then if it's even to have drones, parents can even contribute, because if they're able to contribute 180 million to rescue the children, they should be able to contribute that, since the government might not be, maybe they have to use their money in other areas. Since our children are quite important to us, they should have things like drones, use them to monitor the place, to know what's going on, and then enroll the community. Enroll the community. The community have to be stakeholders, because from there they will get intelligence.
Okay, especially because the schools are within the communities, and I think Father Leo mentioned that as well.
Yeah,
there's
they carry 180, 150, and so many people, children, out of a place. And I'm like,
and nobody sees anything.
Exactly. Ambassador, just one moment. We need to take a break now to take a message or two. But there are so many other things that one would like to ask you. And I'd like to ask Mr. Hawkins, for instance, said that the international community has a role to play. How? We'll be back. Thanks for staying with us. Mr. Hawkins, for one of the things that struck me in the report you just saw is what do we do when some of the children eventually return? And I also draw from the statement put out by UNICEF in Nigeria that part of the efforts that UNICEF expects the international community to play a role in is providing psychosocial support to children affected by violence. So I'm just wondering, where, in your opinion, do you see this going? How far-reaching do you think we should make this? In the first place, where should we even begin? Some have been rescued, some have not been rescued. As you said earlier, some of the Chibok girls are still in captivity. And so for so many others afterwards. So in terms of this psychosocial supports to the children, what do you see us doing? What do you think have been done? You may have reports that we don't have.
It is being done, and there is a capacity within Nigeria, especially in the northeast, where children who have been open to violence do receive psychosocial care, where teachers who are open to violence have received psychosocial care and psychosocial training so that they can give psychosocial care to their own children. We're expanding that out into other states, especially Zamfara, Niger, and Kaduna. It's still weak, but that is being built up so that they can respond to incidences of violence of this nature. It's key, though, that we understand that a returning child has been both traumatized and their education has been interrupted, so that it's very important that they resume a routine, safe routine indeed, that allows them to resume their education, resume their learning, but while at the same time ensure that they get some sort of psychosocial support as they go through the process of recovery.
But that's just for the children. How about the parents? And how far-reaching, what do you think the impact could be of a sustained attack on schools if we don't do anything?
Oh, the impact is phenomenal, and as we've discussed, it's not only for those parents and children directly affected, it's those parents and children who see what has happened and have the fear has prevented them from going back to school. And then, as we saw in Kaduna, some schools have been closed, and that's the case in many other states. And this is having a profound effect on education and the morale in the education sector and the framework in which education and learning is provided for children.
Father Leo, this has continued. We have seen one after the other and the other. And it seems like in some cases, some negotiations are made and some monies exchange hands. So there is contact with the perpetrators. And as surely as no person has been arrested and prosecuted, this may be the fuel that is giving them the impetus and the courage, the sheer temerity of 100 people getting on motorbikes to go and kidnap children without fear of being apprehended. Don't you think that it is this lack of will to deal with them that is making them bolder by the day?
You've hit the nail on the head. There is clearly a culture of impunity that is basically fueling insecurity in the nation and fueling kidnap of children. Just take a typical game like soccer. Imagine an umpire who sees that a player has been injured, or and decides not to award a penalty, or something has gone wrong in a game and decides not to award a penalty. Of course, the game is going to end up with people with broken, bones, and so there's a culture of impunity in the country right now. There is no punishment, no penalty, no prosecution, and there is no transparency. Because if indeed, with the intelligence we have in the country and the capacity for intelligence, that contact has been made with the people who perpetrated these heinous crimes, if contact is made, then what stops the further movement to actually get the perpetrators, get those sponsoring this? So there seems to be a lot of partiality, and it's not helping the situation. I mean, we know that there have been ways that the government has tried to arrest some certain people with intelligence. You know, we wish they could use that kind of energy, that kind of momentum to also deal with insecurity in the Northeast, in the Northwest, and other parts of the country, because we might just be thinking it's a northern thing. No, it's a Nigerian thing. What affects a school in the Northeast affects us wherever we are, whether in the South or Southeast or wherever. Right now, the morale for many school leaders is low. Whenever we get this news, the morale is low. So it's not helping the nation. So it's affecting us. So there's also a culture of silence. You know, that's why I see there's a culture of silence. And it's good we're having this conversation, because some people do not want to speak about this because they feel it does not concern them. It concerns everyone.
Father Leo, this conversation started way long before now. To the best of my knowledge, I think we even started having this kind of conversation around insecurity since about 2009 or so. I'm wondering, if it's as concerning for school authorities, what can school administrators, heads of schools like yourself do, you know, to either intervene or help schools that are also so attacked? The sad reality is that most of these attacks happen on public schools. What can school administrators do? The Ministry of Information at the federal level is there. And then you talked about the regions, the states where these attacks happen. What can they do?
Well, first of all, I do not deny the fact that we've been having a conversation about insecurity for the past 20 years, since the rise of Boko Haram. But what I mean is that we need to expand it. We need to expand the framework in which this conversation is taking place. There is need for networking among schools. There is need for networking between schools and the ministry. And there is need for gathering of intelligence. There is need to also end this culture of, in quote, silence, where people feel like, well, it has happened in Borno, so it doesn't concern me, it concerns all of us. If you remember, after the Second World War, Martin Niemöller, the German that was imprisoned, the Lutheran minister that was imprisoned, he was making a confession, you know, because he survived, and he said, well, you know, first of all, they came for the communists, and I did not speak out because I wasn't a communist. And then they came for the socialists, and I didn't speak out because I wasn't a socialist. And then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. They came for the Catholics. I did not speak out because I wasn't a Catholic. If I can transpose that to our own Nigerian context, it's tantamount to saying, well, you know, first they came to Borno, and I did not speak out because I don't live in Borno. And then they came to Adamawa, and I didn't speak out because my state is not in red alert. And then they came to Yobe, and then they came to Katsina, and then they came to Kaduna, and I didn't speak out because that's not my territory. And then they came to me, and there was no one left to speak, you know. So somehow we're all integrated, we're all connected, you know. This thing is just getting out of hand. It's like a snowball effect. And I think it will take the concerted effort of both school administrators, everybody, you know, the local government, the state government, the national government, the community, to really say we cannot continue to live in a state of siege, non-stop, every day. And also there's lack of respect for the dignity of life. Look at the United States. Things happen. I mean, when George Floyd was killed, the whole nation had to run around, and because, every single life matters. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. When people shoot, sometimes you have shootings in schools. When that happens in the United States, there's mourning, there's lowering of flag. But here in Nigeria, it's like nonstop. 100 have been taken today, and ransom has been paid. 10 have been killed, 5 have been killed. The Greenfield University, people have been abducted, some killed, and it's like business as usual, nonstop. For me, that's a very wrong framework, because it's like midnight for me in the Nigerian moral order right now.
I feel you, because I have also been afraid largely that we could, God forbid, that we get to a point where we become so emotionally immune, so to speak, to some of these horrible challenges. But let me ask you, Ambassador Ekhomu, I mentioned earlier that these occurrences happen in schools, and the schools are in states. Ultimately, it's the governors that are said to be the chief responsibility officers or chief security officers of their different states. Do you think there is anything the governors of the schools can do, Ambassador Ekhomu, to ensure that we, help stave this off?
Thank you very much. Like you rightly said, the occurrences are in states, like the Kaduna situation. We had the Samfara, we had the Borno, we had the Adamawa, and there are different governors in those places. So much as the federal government has a responsibility to ensure that they send their troops in, the governor is still the chief security of his. And with that, the school administrators and the governors have to do something, and also the community, they have to do something. So they normally have security votes. In Lagos State, I know with the security vote, they have the security trust fund, and with that, they've been able to really motivate and fund the police in this area, help get vehicles, get motorcycles if they are needed, to ensure that whatever kind of crimes in this area, they're able to get them out. And I would say that should be done in like in Kaduna, Zamfara, and the other places. These bandits, they come in so many vehicles. So what stops the governors from using their security vote to get a lot of vehicles for their security, even vigilantes, to monitor the state? People entering into the state. So when they are coming, then they should be able to stop them. And then they should be able to also get drones to monitor what is happening, so that they will get intelligence. And when there is any activity, then they can stop them in their tracks. Many places where there have been successes here, like in the one that happened in you also, where the Amoteco was able to assist. The governors were the ones that worked with them to be able to put those things in place. So they should be able to have that in places like Kaduna, Zamfara, Yobe, Borno, to protect their places. So that everybody, instead of crying out, because right now, if we cry out, we'll still die. So what do? We have to take action. So we have to enroll, like I said, the community, get the vigilantes out, get the state governors to arm their people. Since they are the chief security of their state, we have the police there, we have the civil defense in every locality there. So, and then with that, be able to wait for any threat, because there's normally they even send letters of threats that they are coming. So why can't we, if they send letters of threat, then we should be able to focus our countermeasures to ensure that we neutralize them. And once we start doing that, once we get them and we neutralize them, then we stop. But right now, like it's been said, there's just impunity every time. They come, they seize these people, they come in droves, seize these children, and they move out. Nobody stops them. It's only children that are able to escape from vehicles that are broken down, that are safe. Then I know in one of the situations, the military, they used their helicopters, and then they were able to save some people. We should have more of things like that, so that these bandits will stop, because they will not stop until we do something, and there's no punishment for them. I expect that we use the same zeal that we use in the southeast in the north. To ensure that we stop this, because if we don't stop it, it's going to swallow us, it's going to finish us, it's going to come down, like the Reverend rightly said. It's been coming down. Borno before, Yobe, Adamawa, now Kaduna. I did my NYC in Kaduna. I in fact love Kaduna so much that I wanted to live there. But now Kaduna is a no-go area, and if something is not done, it's going to come down. So we have to stop it. We have to stop them in their track. And we have Gumi who goes to negotiate with them. So it's not that we don't know where they are. They go to negotiate with them. We've even seen them brandishing their weapons. And then when they are brandishing their weapons and boasting, we see even policemen, we see different people there, and they're not even arrested. So in fact, the culture of impunity, in fact, stays. And it's quite scary. So we have to do something. It's like it's okay for them to do it and get away with it, which is not right. And
Ambassador,
that is like fueling what is going on. So they are going from one school to the other, and and they are getting the ransom. We deliver this ransom. Why can't we have tracking devices? Why can't we have tracking devices that will track where the money was delivered, and with that go there and neutralize them? What's going on?
Ambassador,
we have the capability. It's not that we can't do it. It's just that the willingness to do it is not there.
Ambassador, you said they send notices and then they come and they cart the children away. Why can't we neutralize them? I'm sure you have heard that they have superior firepower. So even if it's just your school security that's available, how are they going to neutralize them with the kind of arms which they are going to carry? And are you going to have enough men on ground to actually succeed in doing that?
If you get a letter of threats, then you should get the soldiers in there. You should get the police in there.
Who are not well armed.
You get a letter of threat and you only depend on your guard or one policeman. It's not going to work, because they come in droves. They overwhelm whoever is there. So you should immediately use communication system to call them. So even in the school, there should be things like alarm systems. So if you see something, apart from saying something, press the alarm, let the bells be ringing, let everybody know that there's a problem in the place.
Okay.
Instead of them just coming, they carry these people away.
Okay, Ambassador,
the authorities should be able to call for help.
Yeah.
And focus the help in that location.
I like the angle of security votes that you mentioned. Let's hope that they will be used to do just that, provide security. Mr. Hawkins, in rounding off, I'd like to ask you to do two things. First of all, speak to infrastructural deficiencies that you have seen in schools and what needs to be done. And then UNICEF put out that statement that an estimated 950 students have been abducted from their schools by armed men since December, and that over the past 6 weeks, nearly 500. Are there projections that could say, if nothing is done, X number of students or X number of attacks could happen in X number of days, weeks, months, or years?
It's very difficult to project, and it's actually understanding what is happening that is critical. But if I may, I think in end of April we brought the security services, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Education, the governors, and the international community together to look at this. And the people who were most prominent in looking at the solutions were the security forces themselves. And they fully understood the soft side of what needs to be done. Yes, there does need to be infrastructural changes. When you look at the school in Zamfara, that was attacked. That was a secondary school for 2 local government areas where the girls had to travel extensively, and that's why you have the boarding there. Building 2 schools nearer where the population is will resolve the problem. Upgrading schools to a degree so they have proper fencing and so on, is important. But actually what is a lot more important, and the security services themselves say this, is the intelligence. Can you imagine here in Abuja or with you in Lagos, the logistical wahala to take 300 girls on a day trip, just one day trip, what that would take? And then you transpose that to how these people are traveling across difficult terrain at night and taking 300 girls. The logistical exercise for that, it will take weeks. It also requires a lot of chatter. And that is that intelligence that needs to come to bear to be able to stop the perpetrators from attacking the school in the first place, or when they do, that there is a fully fledged response to be able to bring those children back. And that response is a collective response. Well, governors play a very, very important role. And developing state-led security plans with the security services is crucial. There you can see what infrastructure is required, what soft intelligence is required, but most importantly, as the Reverend said, and I alluded to earlier on, how you engage with the communities to create those security elements to safeguard the pupils and their teachers in the school.
Very quickly.
Will play out in the future.
Well, just one moment, Mr. Hawkins. Just very, very quickly, because we have run completely out of time. You also talked about creating safe temporary learning environments for children in areas where schools have been closed because of insecurity. Kaduna State, for instance, is one who has done that. What do you mean by that, and how can that happen? Very quickly, please.
Well, there are different ways of doing it. One is facilitating learning at home, facilitating learning in the communities outside of a school environment. Second is accelerated learning for those children whose education has been interrupted. But most importantly, I suppose, it's actually going back to basics and looking at ways of ensuring that children themselves can experience a learning dynamic, especially around the 3 R's of writing, reading, and arithmetic. Those are different ways that we have trialed, both in the security risk areas and more expansively elsewhere in Nigeria.
Oh, that's where we have to leave it today. Of course, this conversation continues, but I'd just like to thank our panel today. Ambassador Victoria Ekhomu, Managing Director, Transworld Security, who joined us via Zoom. Mr. Peter Hawkins, UNICEF representative in Nigeria, who joined us from our studio in Abuja, as well as Father Leo Moneme, the school administrator, who was in our studio in Lagos. Thank you all very much. This conversation, of course, continues. We will be back with another interesting conversation in just a moment. Do stay with us.